Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Lift. During the month of April, we have a wonderful theme. We're going to be talking about meditation and 3 different ways we practice meditation. In the past 2 months, we've talked about listening to God and talking with God, study and prayer. Now we're talking about being with God, enjoying His presence through the practice of Christian contemplation. Thank you for being with us tonight. Some of you are watching this as a premiere on Facebook, and others of you are watching it at one of our 4 Lift sites, including Lift Hadley there at the building. And we want you to know the reason that this is not a live service like usual is because we want these Lift gatherings to be somewhat private and personal when it comes to sharing. We do a lot of discussion, and we want a relaxed atmosphere where people feel free to give and take. So, with that in mind, I want us to get started in our first of 3 meditation practices. We're going to talk about meditation as remembering. Let me begin by asking you a question. How's your memory? And which is better, your short-term memory or your long-term memory? Memory's pretty important, isn't it? I remember the Apostle Paul said in Philippians chapter 3, beginning in verse 13, "But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Well, the Apostle Paul tells us sometimes we need to forget. That is, there are things that can hold us back. There can be grudges. There can be a lack of forgiveness. There can be narcissism and prideful accomplishments. There can be the sins of the past that make us feel like we can't change and grow and do better. Paul says there's some things that aren't good to remember. And on the other hand, the Bible tells us that remembering is exceptionally important. We gather on the Lord's Day and partake of the Lord's Supper. Jesus said, "Do this in remembrance of me." So remembering is important. Our main text for today comes from the book of Psalms, Psalm 143 and verse 5. It says, "I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the works of your hand. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land." God created us with this human capacity to remember. Animals have a kind of memory, but it's more a reaction than rational. But human beings have the ability to recall, and as they reflect, to make purposeful decisions. Here he says, it is important to remember the days of old. The past has many lessons in it. And he says, I meditate on all that you have done. He says that you have done with the work of your hands. That is an anthropomorphism. God is a spirit. He doesn't have hands like humans, but with intention and effort, he is working in the world and working in our lives. And he says it's good to go back and remember. I suppose that's why in the Bible we have the books of history in the Old Testament. It's why we have the book of Acts, the history of the New Testament church in our new covenant. And so with that in mind, I just want us to look here at what he says can come from that. He says here that he will stretch out his hands to God. His soul is going to thirst for God like a parched land. What's the point here? Stretching out the hands is talking about worship. And we understand that when we worship, it ought to make us want to serve God. Worship and service, those are the outcomes. When we remember God, we have an appreciation. Contemplation leads to appreciation. And appreciation leads to activation. It gets us going and makes us want to serve our God, bring glory to him, bless our fellow man. Well, this is just the introduction. I know you're looking forward to the questions that are going to follow. For those who are watching on Facebook, I'll go ahead and include the questions that we'll be discussing for your own personal reflection or with your loved ones as you gather. But thank you for being with us tonight. Let's use this human capacity, which is also a spiritual capacity. Let's use our memories that God gave us, or our capacity for remembrance. Let's use it to reflect on all the things that God has done in the past, his wonderful track record that tells us he still loves us today and will be with us till the end of our lives. Until next time, let's lift up Christ and build up one another.
You came from heaven to earth to show the way. From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high.